The sun was setting over Winslow, Arizona Territory, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson as Willow Bennett stood on the edge of town, watching her family's ranch burn in the distance. The flames reached high into the darkening sky, consuming everything she had ever known, everything she had ever loved. Her parents, her home, her future, all reduced to ash in a matter of hours by men who had decided the Bennett land was worth more than the Bennett lives. It was 1878, and the Arizona Territory was still wild and untamed, a place where justice was often found at the end of a gun barrel rather than in a courtroom. Willow had been in town when the attack happened, picking up supplies and medicine for her ailing mother. She'd returned to find devastation. 3 days later, she found herself at the Winslow Saloon, clutching her father's pocket watch, the only possession she had left, and contemplating selling it for enough money to leave town. The saloon was smoky and loud, filled with cowboys, railroad workers, and miners' men who had come to seek their fortune in the Western Territories. "You look like you could use a drink, miss," said a deep voice beside her. Willow turned to see a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of the desert sky. He wore dusty trail clothes and a Stetson hat pushed back on his head, revealing dark brown hair streaked with gold from long days under the sun. A gun belt hung low on his hips, the holster worn from use. "I don't have money for drinks," she said simply, her voice hollow. She had been sitting in the corner for nearly an hour, gathering her courage to approach the saloon keeper about the watch. "Allow me," he said, setting a glass of whiskey in front of her. "Samuel Hayes," he introduced himself, tipping his hat slightly. "Most folks call me Sam." "I didn't ask for charity, Mr. Hayes," Willow said, though she made no move to push the drink away. "Not charity, miss, just common courtesy." He leaned against the bar beside her. "You look like you've seen the rough side of fortune." Willow laughed bitterly. "That's one way to put it." She took a sip of the whiskey, wincing at the burn, but welcoming the warmth that followed. "Willow Bennett," she offered after a moment. "Bennett?" Sam straightened. "From the Bennett place out east of town?" Her eyes darkened. "What's left of it?" Sam's expression changed, a flash of recognition crossing his features. "I heard what happened. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't rebuild a ranch or bring back the dead, Mr. Hayes." Willow took another sip of her drink. "But I appreciate the sentiment all the same." "No, I reckon it doesn't." Sam was quiet for a moment. "Do they know who did it?" "The Caldwell outfit," Willow said, her voice tight with anger. "They've been trying to buy our water rights for years. My father refused to sell. Guess they decided to take what they wanted anyway." "Walter Caldwell," Sam muttered, almost to himself. "That man's been trouble since he set foot in the territory." Willow looked at him sharply. "You know him?" "Know of him," Sam corrected. "He's got a reputation from here to Texas, money and no scruples about how he gets more of it." He studied her face. "You're planning something. I can see it in your eyes." "I'm planning to sell this watch and get on the next eastbound train," Willow said, not meeting his gaze. "There's nothing left for me here." "That watch worth much?" "It was my father's. Gold case, still works fine, should fetch enough for a ticket." Sam nodded. "And then what?" "I have family in St. Louis, or I did 10 years ago. My aunt might take me in." "And the men who killed your family, who burned your home, they just go free?" Willow's hand tightened around the glass. "What would you have me do, Mr. Hayes? I'm a woman alone with no money and no skills beyond running a ranch that no longer exists." "You strike me as capable of more than you're letting on, Miss Bennett." "Capable or not, I'm not foolish enough to think I can take on Walter Caldwell and his men by myself." Sam was quiet for a long moment, considering something. Finally he said, "What if you weren't by yourself?" Willow looked up at him, really studying him for the first time. He was older than her, perhaps 32, her 22 years, with lines around his eyes that spoke of long days in the sun. There was something in the way he held himself, a quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly what he was capable of. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." "I know enough," Sam said. "I know what it's like to lose everything, and I know that Walter Caldwell has been buying up or burning down half the small ranches in this part of the territory for the past year." "You're a rancher?" Sam shook his head. "Not anymore. I'm a bounty hunter now. Just finished bringing in a man wanted in Tucson." And now you're looking for your next job? Willow asked, skepticism evident in her voice. Something like that, Sam admitted with a slight smile. Though I generally prefer my quarry to have a price on their head. There's no bounty on Walter Caldwell. No, but there should be. Sam finished his drink and set the glass on the bar. Let me help you, Miss Bennett. Not for money, not for glory, but because it's the right thing to do. Willow studied him, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, she asked, "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Hayes?" "First, I'm proposing we get you a proper meal and a place to stay that isn't this saloon. Then I'm proposing we gather evidence against Caldwell enough to take to the territorial marshal. And if the marshal won't act," Willow pressed, "Caldwell has money and influence." "Then we consider other options," Sam said simply. Willow hesitated, torn between her desperate desire for justice and her fear of trusting this stranger. Finally, the weight of her grief and anger tipped the scales. "All right, Mr. Hayes, I accept your help." "Sam," he corrected, "if we're going up against Caldwell together, I think we can dispense with formalities." "Sam, then," Willow agreed, offering her hand. "But I should warn you, I have nothing to pay you with. I have nothing left to give." Sam took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "Your word that you'll see this through is payment enough." Willow nodded, feeling the first stirrings of hope since the fire. Perhaps she wouldn't be leaving Winslow after all. True to his word, Sam took Willow to the small boarding house run by Widow Callahan, a stern but kind-hearted woman who took one look at Willow's haunted eyes and dusty clothes and immediately ushered her inside. "You poor child," she said, leading Willow to a small but clean room on the second floor. "I heard about your folks. Terrible business, just terrible." "Thank you for taking me in, Mrs. Callahan," Willow said, overwhelmed by the woman's kindness. "No need for thanks. Your mother helped nurse my Thomas through the fever 2 winters back. I never forget a kindness." The widow turned to Sam. "You'll see she gets justice, Mr. Hayes?" Sam nodded solemnly. "I aim to try, madam." "Good. She'll be safe here while you do." Mrs. Callahan patted Willow's arm. "Get some rest, dear. Things look brighter after sleep and a hot meal." After the widow left, Willow turned to Sam. "How do we start?" "First you rest," Sam said firmly. "Tomorrow we'll ride out to what's left of your ranch. Maybe find some evidence of who exactly did this." "I know who did it," Willow said, anger flaring. "I told you." "Knowing isn't the same as proving," Sam interrupted gently. "If we're going to do this right, we need proof the marshal can't ignore." Willow sighed, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the past few days. "You're right. Tomorrow, then." Sam tipped his hat. "I'll meet you here at first light. Get some sleep, Miss Bennett." "Willow," she corrected, "if we're dispensing with formalities." Sam smiled, a genuine smile that softened his weathered features. "Willow." "Sleep well." That night, for the first time since the fire, Willow slept without nightmares. Dawn was just breaking when Willow descended the stairs of the boarding house to find Sam waiting, 2 horses tethered outside. He wore the same practical clothes as the day before, but he had added a rifle and a saddle scabbard to his usual sidearm. "Morning," he greeted, handing her a tin cup of coffee. "Mrs. Callahan said to make sure you drink this before we head out." "Thank you." Willow accepted the cup gratefully. She had dressed in her one remaining outfit, a practical riding skirt and blouse, worn but clean. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in a simple braid. "You managed to find horses." "Borrowed them from the livery," Sam explained. "The sorrel mare is yours for the day. She's gentle but has good stamina." Willow nodded appreciatively. "You know horses." "Grew up with them," Sam said, a distant look crossing his face briefly. "Shall we?" The ride to the Bennett ranch was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. As they crested the final hill, Willow drew her horse to a halt, staring at the blackened ruins below. What had once been a thriving small ranch was now a collection of charred timber and collapsed walls. The main house was completely destroyed, as were the barn and bunkhouse. Only the stone chimney of the house remained standing, like a lone sentinel over a graveyard of memories. "I buried them there," Willow said quietly, nodding toward 2 small mounds marked with crude wooden crosses near an old oak tree. "My father and mother, it was all I could do before—" Her voice broke, and Sam respectfully removed his hat, holding it against his chest as he gazed at the graves. They deserve better markers, he said. We'll see to that when this is over. Willow nodded, unable to speak. After a moment, she urged her horse forward, determined to face what remained of her former life. They dismounted near what had been the front porch of the house. Sam tied the horses to a section of fence that had somehow survived the fire, then turned to survey the scene with a professional eye. "Tell me everything you remember," he said. "Even small details might help." Willow took a deep breath. "I was in town, getting medicine for my mother. She'd been ill with a fever. When I returned, it was late afternoon. I saw the smoke from the road." Her voice grew hollow. "By the time I got here, everything was already burning. I found my father. He was by the barn. He'd been shot twice. My mother was inside the house. I think the smoke got her before the flames. Were there any ranch hands?" "Just old Miguel. He lived in the bunkhouse, helped my father with the cattle." Willow's eyes filled with tears. "I found him by the corral. They shot him in the back." Sam's jaw tightened. "Cowards." "I didn't see anyone," Willow continued. "Whoever did it was already gone. But I know it was Caldwell's men. 2 weeks ago, his foreman came by with an offer for our water rights. My father refused, same as always. The foreman, Curtis Blackwell, he said Mr. Caldwell's patience was running thin." Sam's expression darkened at the mention of the foreman's name. "Blackwell has a reputation. He's done Caldwell's dirty work before." "You know him?" "We've crossed paths," Sam said grimly. "He's not the type to make idle threats." Sam began moving methodically through the ruins, examining the ground around the buildings and occasionally stopping to pick up small items, a spent shell casing, a torn piece of cloth, a half-burned piece of paper. Willow followed silently, watching as he pieced together the story of her family's last moments. After an hour of searching, they gathered near the horses. Sam showed Willow what he had found. "These shell casings are from a Winchester rifle, common enough. But this," he held up a brass spur with an unusual design. "This is distinctive, custom work. I've seen it before." "On one of Caldwell's men?" Sam nodded. "Blackwell's right-hand man, fellow named Jenkins. Never goes anywhere without these spurs." He carefully wrapped the spur in a bandana and tucked it in his saddlebag. "It's not enough yet, but it's a start." "What next?" Willow asked. "Next we talk to people. Someone must have seen something riders heading this way, or leaving afterward. Caldwell's men aren't ghosts." They mounted their horses and took one last look at the ruined ranch. Willow's expression was a mixture of grief and determination. "I will rebuild," she said softly. "When this is over, I'll rebuild everything." "Yes," Sam agreed. "You will." As they rode back toward town, Willow studied her companion's profile. "You never said why you're really helping me, Sam. And don't tell me it's just because it's the right thing to do. There's more to it than that." Sam was silent for a long moment. "Let's just say I understand what it's like to lose everything to men like Caldwell." "What happened?" Willow pressed gently. Sam's eyes grew distant. 6 years ago, I had a small spread in Texas. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, free and clear. Then oil was discovered nearby. Suddenly, my worthless piece of scrubland wasn't so worthless anymore. A man named Harrison decided he wanted it. And he took it, Willow guessed. He tried. I refused to sell. One night, 3 men came. I wasn't home. I was helping a neighbor with a difficult calving. My wife was there alone. Sam's voice grew tight. She was braver than she should have been. Faced them down with my old shotgun. "Sam, I'm so sorry," Willow said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "They killed her. Burned the house with her inside to make it look like an accident." Sam's knuckles were white on his reins. "I tracked those men for 2 years, found each one, made sure they faced justice legal when possible, frontier when necessary." "And Harrison?" "He's serving 20 years in Huntsville prison. Not for my wife's murder, couldn't prove he ordered it, but for land fraud. I found evidence he'd been forging deeds all across the county." Sam's smile held no humor. "Sometimes justice comes in unexpected ways." "That's why you became a bounty hunter," Willow realized. Sam nodded. "Seemed fitting, using the skills I learned tracking my wife's killers to bring other criminals to justice." He glanced at her. "So, you see, Miss Bennett, I understand your need for justice. Perhaps better than most." Willow reached across the space between their horses and briefly touched his arm. "Thank you for telling me." Sam nodded, and they continued their ride back to town in companionable silence. Over the next week, Sam and Willow worked methodically to build their case against Caldwell. They spoke to townspeople, visited neighboring ranches, and carefully documented everything they learned. The picture that emerged was troubling. Caldwell had been systematically taking control of the water sources throughout the county, either buying out struggling ranchers or forcing them out through intimidation. "He's planning something big," Sam said, as they sat in Willow's room at the boarding house, reviewing their notes. "All these water rights, the strategic locations of the properties he's acquired, it's deliberate." "The railroad," Willow said suddenly. "There's talk they're planning to extend the line west from Winslow, possibly all the way to Flagstaff. If Caldwell controls the water along the route." "He could name his price," Sam finished. "The railroad would have no choice but to pay whatever he asks to water their steam engines and work crews." "That's why he wanted our ranch so badly," Willow realized. "The creek that runs through our property is the largest reliable water source for miles. And your father refused to sell. He always said water was more valuable than gold in Arizona." Willow's eyes filled with tears. He was right. Sam reached over and covered her hand with his. "We're getting closer, Willow. Tomorrow, we take what we have to Marshal Dawson." The territorial marshal, a grizzled veteran named Thomas Dawson, listened impassively as Sam and Willow presented their evidence. The spent shell casings, the distinctive spur, testimonies from neighbors who had seen riders heading toward the Bennett Ranch on the day of the fire, all of it pointing to Caldwell's men. When they finished, Dawson leaned back in his chair, stroking his gray mustache thoughtfully. "It's circumstantial," he said finally. "Strong circumstantial, but still circumstantial." "It's enough for an investigation," Sam argued. "Enough to question Blackwell and Jenkins at least. Questioning Caldwell's men based on this evidence would be politically difficult," Dawson said carefully. Willow stiffened. "Are you saying you won't do anything because Caldwell has influence?" Dawson's expression hardened. "I'm saying I need more than a spur and some hearsay to move against the most powerful man in the county, Miss Bennett. That's how the law works." "My parents were murdered," Willow said, her voice shaking with anger. "Our ranch was burned to the ground. If that's not enough for you to act, what is?" "I'm sorry for your loss, truly," Dawson said, his tone softening slightly. "But I can't make arrests based on grief and suspicion alone." Sam stood up, placing a restraining hand on Willow's shoulder. "Thank you for your time, Marshal. We'll be in touch if we find anything more substantial." Outside the marshal's office, Willow exploded in fury. "He's not going to do anything. Caldwell has him in his pocket." "Keep your voice down," Sam warned, guiding her away from the building. "Dawson's right about one thing. We need something stronger." "Like what? A signed confession?" Willow asked bitterly. "Maybe," Sam said thoughtfully. "Or maybe we need to catch them in the act." "In what act? They've already burned my ranch and killed my family." "Caldwell's not done," Sam pointed out. "He's still consolidating his hold on the water rights in this area. There are other small ranches he hasn't approached yet." Understanding dawned in Willow's eyes. "You think he'll try the same tactics again?" "I'd bet my life on it," Sam said grimly. "And when he does, we'll be waiting." They didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, word reached them that the Miller Place, a small ranch about 10 miles west of town, had received a visit from Curtis Blackwell with an offer to buy their water rights. Jacob Miller, like William Bennett before him, had refused. "It's happening again," Willow said, her face pale as she and Sam huddled over coffee at the small cafe near the boarding house. "We have to warn them." "We will," Sam assured her, "but we'll do more than warn them. We'll set a trap." That evening, they rode out to the Miller Ranch. Jacob Miller, a wiry man in his 50s with a weathered face and suspicious eyes, met them on the porch with a shotgun across his lap. "What business you got here?" he called as they approached. Sam raised his hands to show he was no threat. "We're here about Curtis Blackwell's visit to you earlier this week." Miller's eyes narrowed. "What of it?" "I'm Willow Bennett," Willow said, stepping forward. "William Bennett's daughter." Recognition flashed in Miller's eyes, followed by sympathy. "Heard what happened to your folks. Terrible business." "It was Caldwell's men who did it," Willow said bluntly. "After my father refused to sell our water rights, just like you did." Miller lowered his shotgun slightly. You got proof of that? Some, Sam said. Not enough for the marshal to act, but we believe they'll come after your place next. Let them try, Miller growled, patting his shotgun. I sleep light and shoot straight. So did my father, Willow said softly. It wasn't enough. Miller studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Come on in. You best tell me everything. Inside the small but neat ranch house, Miller's wife Sarah served coffee while Sam and Willow explained their theory about Caldwell's plans for the water rights and the railroad. Makes sense, Miller admitted. Railroad's been surveying all through this area, and Caldwell's been buying up every drop of water he can get his hands on. We think they'll come for your place soon, Sam said. Probably at night, like they did with the Bennett Ranch. What are you proposing? Miller asked, his shrewd eyes moving from Sam to Willow. We want to be here when they come, Sam said. Catch them in the act, with witnesses and evidence the marshal can't ignore. You want to use my ranch as bait, Miller stated flatly. We want to protect your ranch, Willow corrected, and get justice for my family at the same time. Miller exchanged a look with his wife, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, he nodded. All right, but I want something in return. Name it, Sam said. When this is over, if you succeed in bringing Caldwell down, I want first rights to buy back the Bennett water rights. He held up a hand as Willow started to protest. At a fair price, determined by independent appraisal. I'm not looking to cheat you, girl, but I need that water for my cattle. Willow hesitated, then nodded. Agreed, as long as I retain access for my own rebuilding needs. Deal, Miller said, extending his hand. The next 3 nights, Sam and Willow took turns keeping watch at the Miller Ranch, hidden in the barn with a clear view of the approach to the house. Nothing happened the first 2 nights, and Willow began to wonder if they had miscalculated. On the 3rd night, a little after midnight, the sound of approaching horses woke Willow from a light doze. She nudged Sam, who was already alert, his hand on his revolver. 5 riders, he whispered, peering through a crack in the barn wall. Coming in slow, from the east. Willow's heart hammered in her chest. Can you see who they are? Not yet, but they're being careful no lanterns, keeping to the shadows. They watched in tense silence as the riders drew closer. When they reached the edge of the cleared area around the ranch buildings, they dismounted, tying their horses to a clump of mesquite trees. 1 man remained with the horses while the other 4 moved stealthily toward the house. That's Jenkins, Sam whispered, pointing to a tall figure in the lead. And the one behind him is Blackwell. I'd know that walk anywhere. Willow squinted into the darkness. What are they carrying? Rifles, and that looks like... Sam's voice hardened. Kerosene cans, just like I thought. They're going to burn the place. We have to stop them, Willow hissed, reaching for the rifle Miller had lent her. Wait, Sam cautioned. Let them get closer. We need the marshal to have no doubt about their intentions. They watched as the men crept toward the house, their movements betraying their familiarity with this kind of operation. When they reached the front porch, Blackwell gestured for 2 men to circle around to the back. Now, Sam said, raising his own rifle. They burst from the barn just as Blackwell was uncorking a can of kerosene. That's far enough, Sam shouted, his rifle trained on Blackwell's chest. The men froze. Then Blackwell's hand darted toward his holster. I wouldn't, Miller called from the darkened doorway of the house, his shotgun gleaming in the moonlight. Not unless you're keen on meeting your maker tonight. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Blackwell slowly raised his hands. This is a misunderstanding, he said smoothly. We were just... Save it for the marshal, Sam cut him off. He's very interested in why Caldwell's foreman is sneaking around with kerosene in the middle of the night. As if on cue, Marshal Dawson and 2 deputies rode into the yard, lanterns swinging from their saddles. Right on time, Marshal, Sam called, not taking his eyes off Blackwell. What's all this? Dawson demanded, dismounting. Attempted arson at the very least, Sam said. Possibly attempted murder, depending on what else they had planned for the Millers. Dawson surveyed the scene, the armed men, the kerosene cans, the obvious intent, and his expression hardened. Blackwell, you and your men drop your weapons. Slowly. This is a mistake, Marshal, Blackwell protested. Mr. Caldwell isn't here, Dawson interrupted. "And right now, you're caught red-handed trying to burn down a man's home. That's enough for me to take you in." He turned to his deputies. "Disarm them and get them mounted up. We're taking them back to town." As the deputies moved to carry out his orders, Dawson approached Sam and Willow. "Looks like you were right," he admitted grudgingly. "Though I still don't have anything solid tying this to the Bennett killings." "Check Jenkins' spurs," Sam suggested. "I think you'll find one's missing its mate." Dawson raised an eyebrow, then nodded to one of his deputies, who checked the cowboy's boots. Sure enough, one spur matched exactly the one Sam had found at the Bennett ranch. "It's a start," Dawson conceded. "I'll get them talking. Men like these, one usually breaks to save his own hide." As the marshal and his deputies led the prisoners away, Miller approached Sam and Willow. "That was good work," he said gruffly. "Though I wouldn't count Caldwell out yet. He won't take this lying down." "No," Sam agreed, "but it's a beginning." They rode back to town at dawn, exhausted but triumphant. Word of the night's events spread quickly through Winslow, and by noon, it seemed the entire town was buzzing with the news that Walter Caldwell's men had been arrested, attempting to burn down the Miller Ranch. Sam and Willow kept a low profile, resting at the boarding house and waiting for news from Marshal Dawson. It came late that afternoon when the marshal himself knocked on Willow's door. Jenkins talked, he said, without preamble, as Willow invited him in, turned on Blackwell to save himself from a hanging, confirmed they burned the Bennett place on Caldwell's orders, said Blackwell shot your father personally. Willow sank onto a chair, a mixture of relief and renewed grief washing over her. "And Caldwell. I sent my deputies to arrest him an hour ago." Dawson's expression was grim, but he was gone, cleared out his office, took whatever cash he had on hand. His housekeeper said he left town on the morning train, heading east. "He's running," Sam said, his voice hard. "He knows his men will implicate him." Dawson nodded. "I've telegraphed descriptions to marshals in every town between here and Denver. We'll find him." "What about my parents' ranch? The water rights?" Willow asked. "As far as I can determine, your father never sold, so the property is legally yours," Dawson said. "Though you might want to see a lawyer to make sure everything's in order. There have been rumors about forged deeds with some of Caldwell's other acquisitions." After the marshal left, Willow turned to Sam, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It's over," she whispered, "or nearly so." "Yes," Sam agreed, taking her hand. "Justice is coming for your parents, Willow. I promise you that." "Because of you," she said, squeezing his hand. "I would never have been able to do this alone." Sam shook his head. "You're stronger than you know. You would have found a way." Willow looked down at their joined hands, suddenly aware of how right it felt, how natural. Over the past week, Sam had become more than an ally in her quest for justice. He had become a friend, a confidant, and perhaps something more. "What will you do now?" she asked softly. "Return to bounty hunting?" Sam was quiet for a moment, considering. "I haven't thought that far ahead. My focus has been on helping you find justice. And now that we have? Now." Sam hesitated, something vulnerable crossing his weathered features. "Now I find myself reluctant to leave Winslow." "Because of Caldwell?" Willow asked. Though she knew that wasn't the reason. Sam's blue eyes met hers. "Because of you." The weeks that followed were busy ones for Willow. With Blackwell and Jenkins in custody awaiting trial and the search for Caldwell ongoing, she turned her attention to reclaiming and rebuilding her family's ranch. The territorial court confirmed her ownership of the property and all water rights associated with it, dismissing Caldwell's company's claims as fraudulent. Sam stayed in Winslow, ostensibly to ensure Willow's continued safety and to be available to testify at the upcoming trial, but they both knew his reasons ran deeper. As they worked side by side to clear the rubble from the Bennett Ranch and plan its reconstruction, their connection grew stronger. They began rebuilding the main house first. A simple but sturdy structure that would shelter Willow through the coming winter. Sam proved skilled at construction, having built his own home in Texas years before. "You've thought this through," he commented one evening as they reviewed Willow's sketches for the new house. "2 bedrooms? Planning for company?" Willow blushed slightly. "Planning for the future," she corrected. "This is my home now. I want it to be a place where family can grow." Sam's eyes softened at her words. "It's good to think of the future again." Yes, Willow agreed. For a while, I couldn't see past my grief and anger. But now, she looked around at the partially constructed walls of her new home. Now I can imagine possibilities again. As autumn turned to winter, news arrived that Walter Caldwell had been apprehended in Chicago, attempting to board a ship for Europe. He would be returned to the Arizona Territory to stand trial alongside his men. The news brought a sense of closure for Willow, though she knew the trial would reopen wounds barely beginning to heal. One crisp December morning, as they worked together on the roof of the house, Sam broached a subject they had both been circling for weeks. "I've been thinking," he said, carefully nailing down a shingle, "about what comes next." Willow paused in her work. "And what have you decided?" "That depends," Sam said, setting down his hammer and turning to face her. "On you." "On me?" Willow's heart quickened. "I came to Winslow tracking a wanted man. I stayed because I wanted to help you find justice. But now," Sam's voice grew softer, "now I find myself wanting to stay for entirely different reasons." Willow set down her own tools, suddenly unable to focus on anything but the man beside her. "What reasons would those be, Sam Hayes?" "I think you know," he said, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "I've grown to care for you, Willow, more than I thought possible after losing Rebecca. I didn't think my heart could feel this way again." "Sam," Willow breathed, leaning into his touch, "I care for you too. These past months, working together, rebuilding together, you've become more important to me than I know how to say." Sam's smile was like the sunrise, gradual and warming. "I've been thinking about buying land," he said, "not far from here, starting fresh." "You want to be a rancher again?" "I want a home again," he corrected. "A place to belong, with someone to belong to." Willow's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "I think that sounds wonderful." "It won't be easy," Sam cautioned. "Building 2 ranches, facing the trial, dealing with everything that's happened." "Nothing worth having comes easy," Willow said, echoing words her father had often spoken. "But we've already faced the worst together. I think we can handle whatever comes next." Sam leaned forward, his intention clear in his eyes. Willow met him halfway, their lips meeting in a tender kiss that felt like a promise, like coming home after a long journey. When they parted, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I never expected to find you," he whispered, "but now that I have, I don't plan on letting go." Willow smiled, her heart fuller than she had ever imagined it could be again. "Good," she said simply, "because neither do I." The trial of Walter Caldwell and his men was the biggest event Winslow had seen in years. The courthouse was packed daily with spectators eager to see justice served. Willow testified about the events leading up to her parents' murders, her voice steady despite the pain of reliving those terrible days. Sam sat in the front row, his quiet presence giving her strength. Curtis Blackwell, facing the gallows and desperate to save himself, turned on his employer, revealing details of Caldwell's plans to monopolize the water rights along the proposed railroad extension. Jenkins and the other men followed suit, each trying to shift blame higher up the chain. In the end, the jury took less than 2 hours to return guilty verdicts for all defendants. Blackwell and Jenkins were sentenced to hang for the murders of William and Eleanor Bennett. Walter Caldwell received 20 years in the territorial prison for conspiracy to commit murder and fraud, a sentence that, given his age and failing health, was effectively a life term. As they left the courthouse after the sentencing, Willow felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "It's really over," she said to Sam as they walked arm in arm back toward the boarding house. "Yes," he agreed. "Your parents can rest in peace now." "And we can look to the future," Willow said, squeezing his arm. "Our future." The new year brought renewed energy to their rebuilding efforts. The main house was completed by February, and Willow moved in, leaving the boarding house that had sheltered her through the darkest period of her life. Sam had purchased a small property bordering hers, with plans to start a modest cattle operation in the spring. Though they maintained separate households, propriety still held sway even in the relatively free-spirited West. They spent most of their waking hours together. Working side by side, they rebuilt the barn and bunkhouse on Willow's property, repaired fencing, and prepared for the arrival of new cattle. Their relationship deepened as winter turned to spring. Stolen kisses turned into long evenings of conversation by the fire, sharing dreams and plans for the future. They spoke of their pasts too. Sam of his life with Rebecca in Texas, Willow of her childhood, on the ranch with parents who had loved each other as much as they loved the land. One evening in late March, as they sat on the porch of Willow's house watching the sunset paint the distant mazes in shades of gold and crimson, Sam took Willow's hand in his. "I've been meaning to ask you something," he said, his usual confidence seemingly tempered with nervousness. "What is it?" Willow asked, turning to face him. Sam reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. "I rode into Flagstaff last week," he said. "Had some business at the bank, but I had other business too." He opened the pouch and tipped a delicate gold ring with a small diamond into his palm. "It was my mother's," he explained. "I've carried it with me since Rebecca died, not thinking I'd ever have cause to use it again." Willow's breath caught as Sam slid from the porch swing to one knee before her. "Willow Bennett," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You brought me back to life when I thought that part of me was dead forever. You showed me that it's possible to find love twice in one lifetime, if you're lucky enough. I want to build a life with you, a home, a family, a future. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Willow's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Sam Hayes, I will marry you." Sam slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to take her in his arms, sealing their engagement with a kiss that held all the promise of their shared tomorrows. They were married in May, with the desert in bloom around them. The ceremony took place on the Bennett Ranch, under the old oak tree near where Willow's parents were buried. Marshall Dawson officiated, and it seemed the entire town of Winslow turned out to celebrate with them. Jacob Miller and his wife Sarah were there, as was Mrs. Callahan from the boarding house, and dozens of other townspeople who had supported Willow through her darkest days. Even Willow's aunt from St. Louis made the journey, having reconnected with her niece during the trial. As they exchanged vows beneath the ancient oak, Willow felt her parents' presence, a sense of approval and blessing that brought fresh tears to her eyes. When Sam slipped the gold band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, she knew with absolute certainty that she had found her place in the world again. The celebration afterward was joyous, with music and dancing continuing well into the night. As the newlyweds prepared to depart for Sam's house, now their home, until they decided which property would be their permanent residence, Jacob Miller approached with a gift. "This is for both of you," he said, handing Sam a sealed envelope. "A wedding present of sorts." Inside was a legal document transferring Miller's rights to purchase the Bennett water to Sam and Willow jointly. "I realized I don't need the extra water after all," Miller explained with a wink. "My place is doing just fine, but I figured you two might want to combine your operations someday." Willow embraced the older man, touched by his thoughtfulness. "Thank you, Jacob, for everything." As they rode away in the wagon decorated with ribbons and flowers by the local children, Willow leaned against her husband's shoulder. "I never thought I could be this happy again," she confessed. "After everything that happened." Sam pressed a kiss to her temple. "Life has a way of surprising us, sometimes with sorrow, but sometimes with joy beyond measure." "I love you, Sam Hayes," Willow said, her heart full to bursting. "And I love you, Willow Hayes," he replied, the name still new and wonderful on his tongue. "More than I have words to say." The years that followed were good ones for the Hayes family. They combined their properties, creating a thriving cattle ranch that became known for its excellent stock and fair business practices. Sam's experience and Willow's determination proved a formidable combination, and within 5 years, they had tripled their original herd. Their first child, a son they named William Samuel after both their fathers, arrived a year after their wedding. A daughter, Eleanor Sarah, followed 2 years later. As their family grew, so did their happiness and their connection to the land that had brought them together through tragedy and triumph. Winslow grew as well, with the railroad extension finally completed in 1882, bringing new settlers and opportunities to the area. Sam occasionally still took on bounty hunting jobs when particularly dangerous criminals threatened the region, but more and more, he found his satisfaction in building their ranch and raising their children. Willow continued to honor her parents' memory by maintaining the small cemetery under the oak tree, teaching her children about the grandparents they would never know, but whose legacy they lived every day. The story of how their parents met through tragedy and a quest for justice became family lore, though softened appropriately for young ears. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Sam surprised Willow with a special gift, a new headstone for her parents' graves, carved from Arizona sandstone and bearing their names, dates, and the simple inscription, "Their love for each other and this land lives on." As they stood together before the new marker, their children playing nearby under the watchful eye of their hired help, Willow felt a sense of completion. The circle of loss and renewal, grief and joy, had come full term. "They would be proud of what you've built here," Sam said, his arm around her waist. "What we've built together." "Yes," Willow agreed, leaning into his embrace. "I think they would." That evening, after the children were asleep, Sam and Willow sat on the porch of their home, the original house Willow had rebuilt, expanded now to accommodate their growing family. The desert night was cool and clear, stars scattered like diamond dust across the velvet sky. "Do you ever think about how unlikely it was that we found each other?" Willow asked, her head resting on Sam's shoulder. "All the circumstances that had to align for our paths to cross?" "I've thought about it," Sam admitted. "By rights, we should never have met. I was just passing through Winslow, tracking that fugitive. You should have been safely at home on your ranch, not alone in that saloon. Yet, here we are," Willow said softly. "Here we are," Sam echoed, taking her hand in his. "Maybe it wasn't chance at all. Maybe some things are meant to be, no matter what obstacles stand in the way." Willow smiled, thinking of their journey from strangers bound by a common enemy to partners in every sense of the word. "I like to think so." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the desert and the occasional soft noises from their sleeping children through the open window. "I was so broken when we met," Willow said eventually. "I felt I had nothing left to give. My family was gone, my home destroyed. All I had was my anger and my grief." "I remember," Sam said, his voice gentle. "You said as much that first night. 'I have nothing left to give,' you whispered. And you said, 'Your heart is all I'm asking for,'" Sam finished, turning to look into her eyes, still beautiful to him after all these years. "I meant it then, and I mean it now. Everything else, the ranch, the cattle, our home, it's all just trappings. What matters is this." He placed his hand over her heart. "This is what I wanted. This is what made me whole again." Willow covered his hand with hers. "And you did the same for me. You helped me find justice, but more importantly, you helped me find hope again. Love again." Sam leaned forward and kissed her, a kiss as tender as their first, yet deepened by years of shared joys and sorrows, challenges faced and overcome together. "Thank you," he said when they parted, "for trusting me with your heart when you thought you had nothing left." "Thank you," Willow replied, "for showing me that sometimes what seems like an ending is really just the beginning of something even more beautiful." As the years continued to pass, the Hayes Ranch flourished. William and Eleanor grew into capable young adults, each with their father's courage and their mother's determination. William, now 20, showed a natural aptitude for the cattle business and had recently begun taking on more responsibility in running the ranch. Eleanor, 18 and spirited, divided her time between helping with the ranch and pursuing her education, determined to attend college in Denver the following year. Winslow had grown from a small outpost to a proper town, with a schoolhouse, several churches, and a growing business district. The railroad had brought prosperity, and many of the families who had struggled during the early years were now comfortably established. Sam and Willow, in their mid-50s, were respected community leaders. Sam had served a term as town councilman, while Willow had helped establish the town's first lending library. Their ranch was known throughout the territory for its quality stock and fair dealings. Life had not been without its challenges. Drought years had threatened their herds, economic downturns had affected cattle prices, and both children had experienced the normal trials of growing up. But through it all, Sam and Willow's partnership had remained strong, their love deepening with each passing year. On a warm evening in the summer of 1900, as the new century was just beginning to unfold its possibilities, the family gathered on the porch of the ranch house to celebrate Sam and Willow's 25th wedding anniversary. Friends and neighbors had come from miles around, bringing food and gifts and stories to share. As twilight descended, casting long shadows across the land they had nurtured for a quarter century, Sam raised a glass to his wife. 25 years ago, I thought my life's journey was nearly over, he said, his voice carrying across the assembled guests. I'd lost everything I valued and was just going through the motions of living. Then I met a woman who changed everything, a woman with courage enough for both of us, with determination to seek justice and rebuild from ashes, with a heart big enough to love even a broken man like me. Willow's eyes shone with tears as Sam continued. Willow Hayes, loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. Building this ranch, raising our children, facing whatever came our way, it's been a journey I wouldn't trade for all the gold in California. Here's to 25 more years of loving you. Here, called the guests, raising their glasses in tribute. Later, as the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, William approached his parents with Eleanor beside him. Pa, Ma, we have something for you, William said, handing them a small wooden box. From both of us. Inside the box was a miniature replica of their ranch house, carved with exquisite detail from a single piece of pine. The tiny windows glowed with inset amber, creating the illusion of lamplight within. Eleanor designed it, and I carved it, William explained, to commemorate the home you built, not just the buildings, but the family, the legacy. It's beautiful, Willow breathed, examining the intricate details. Look, Sam, you can even see the oak tree. We wanted you to know, Eleanor said, her voice surprisingly emotional, how much we appreciate the life you've given us, the stories you've shared about how you met, how you fought for justice, how you rebuilt from nothing. They've shaped who we are. You taught us that love can overcome anything, William added, that even after the worst losses, there can be new beginnings. Sam and Willow embraced their children, overwhelmed by the gesture and the sentiment behind it. You two are our greatest achievement, Sam said. Everything else, the ranch, the cattle, our place in the community, it pales in comparison to the joy of raising you. As William and Eleanor moved away to help the remaining guests, Sam took Willow's hand and led her away from the gathering, toward the old oak tree that had witnessed so much of their history. The tree had grown even larger over the years, its spreading branches now offering shade to 4 graves Willow's parents, and next to them, the resting places of Sam's first wife Rebecca and their unborn child, whose remains he had eventually brought from Texas to rest beside the family that had given him a second chance at happiness. 25 years, Sam said softly, gazing up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I walked into that saloon and saw you sitting there, holding your father's watch. And sometimes it feels like we've always been together, Willow replied, leaning against him. Like my life didn't really begin until I met you. Do you ever regret it? Sam asked. Staying in Winslow, rebuilding, going through all the hard years? Willow shook her head emphatically. Never, not for a single moment. Every struggle was worth it, Sam. Every tear, every worry, every challenge, it all led us here, to this life we've built together. How could I regret that? Sam smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling in the way that still made Willow's heart skip a beat after all these years. I was thinking earlier today about that moment in the saloon when you said you had nothing left to give. And you only asked for my heart, Willow finished, the memory still vivid after all this time. It seemed impossible then that my broken heart could be enough for anyone, let alone a man like you. Your heart was all I needed, Sam said simply. It still is. Willow reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the familiar contours of his cheeks, his jaw, the silver now threaded through his once dark hair. And yours is all I need. Now and always. They stood together in the gathering darkness, 2 people who had found in each other the strength to overcome tragedy, to build something lasting and meaningful, to create a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone. The ranch would continue. Their children would carry forward the values they had instilled. The land would persist, nourished by the water that had once been worth killing, for what was now a source of life and prosperity for all who shared it. And through it all, their love born in grief, tempered by justice, strengthened by shared purpose, would remain the foundation upon which everything else was built. A love that had asked only for two hearts, and in return had created a world of possibilities. As they walked hand in hand back toward the house where their family and remaining friends awaited them, Willow thought about the long journey that had brought them to this moment, the sorrows and joys, the struggles and triumphs, the ordinary days and extraordinary moments that had woven together to create the tapestry of their shared life. "You know what I'm most grateful for?" she asked as they approached the warm light spilling from the windows of their home. "What's that?" Sam replied, squeezing her hand. "That even in my darkest hour, when I truly believed I had nothing left to give, you saw something worth asking for." She stopped, turning to face him in the soft glow of the lamplight. "You saw me, Sam. Not just my grief or my anger or my loss. You saw me." "I've always seen you, Willow Hayes," Sam said softly. "From that very first night. And what I saw then, what I still see now, is the most beautiful sight in all of God's creation." Willow smiled, her heart as full in that moment as it had ever been. "Let's go inside," she said. "Our family's waiting." Together, they crossed the threshold into the house they had built, the home they had created, the life they had forged from tragedy and triumph, from loss and love, from endings that had proven to be beginnings in disguise. And as they joined their children and friends in the warm kitchen filled with laughter and stories, both knew with absolute certainty that whatever the future might hold, they would face it as they had faced everything for the past 25 years together, with courage, with determination, and most of all, with hearts that had once seemed empty but had proven boundless in their capacity to love.